let's take a look at some of the information behind race and the suffrage movement. All right, our first slide here, we can talk about women and their right to vote. New Zealand was a world pioneer. As a matter of fact, they were the first country to allow women's suffrage or voting in 1893, while in the U.S., women weren't allowed to vote until the 19th Amendment passed in 1920. Saudi Arabian women were not allowed to vote for the very first time until 2015. That is a dubious distinction, but still better than the folks in Vatican City, the only country that allows men but not women to vote. What's up with that, Pope? Coincidentally, in Saudi Arabia, women were granted the right to vote just last year, but not the right to drive themselves to the ballot because they still can't legally drive there. So two things for both of those countries to work on. Moving forward, we're looking at race and the movement. The first real fight for women's suffrage came out of the anti-slavery movement of the 1840s and 50s. By 1869, two major women's suffrage groups were formed by leaders like Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucy Stone and Julia Ward Howe. Now, there was a schism between those two groups because one thought that they should have the amendment extended to granting African-American men the right to vote, but those amendments didn't go as far to include women or let alone African-American women. So there's a little bit of a split there. Moving forward, we're going to bring it up to 1918 when President Woodrow Wilson decided to support the amendment after ratification of the 19th by the states and signed it into law on August 26th of 1920. Some of the text from that amendment: the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the state or by the United States or any state on account of sex. And within decades of passing that, state laws, vigilante practices in much of the South, all but disenfranchised folks down there who happen to be African American. But of course, a few decades later, the Voting Rights Act came in the mid-60s and extended that right. But a little bit closer to home where we are now, that Voting Rights Act went the way of the dodo. That's the look at race and suffrage movement. Now let's get into the A block.
Many African-American women were highly active in winning the vote for all women, despite sometimes facing discrimination within the suffrage movement itself. Tomorrow, the city's Department of Records and Information Services, aka DORIS, hosts a discussion titled Centering Black Women, Race in the Women's Suffrage Movement. And here to tell us more is Tracy Penn, the program director of the Women's Suffrage Centennial at DORIS. Thanks for being here, Tracy.
Thanks so much for having me.
Tracy, we're having this event tomorrow, but this celebration started last year. It's going to be a 5-year-long thing. So why don't you tell us how it all got started and what has already happened?
Okay. DORIS doesn't seem like the Department of Records. It's kind of a crazy place, right, for the Suffrage Centennial to be centered. But the de Blasio administration has been incredibly supportive of women. There's over 53% of the commissioners of the de Blasio administration are women. And Pauline Toole, the commissioner of the Department of Records, really cares about women's history and about archiving and creating a history in the city, which currently now is basically old white men, because that's all that's ever been archived here.
Erase the women from history.
Right. Well, they were
never there to begin with.
They were never there to begin with. They were there, but they were never archived, let's say. Gotcha. So she, along with some leaders in the community, decided that we needed to celebrate suffrage. It's an incredibly important event, and I was hired to do something creative. So I had kind of a blank slate, which was always really exciting. And we decided to celebrate for 5 years. 2015 was Elizabeth Cady Stanton's 200th birthday. She was the one who really kicked off the movement. And then it goes until 2017 will be the New York State Centennial, and then 2020 the U.S. Centennial. So we'll celebrate over those 5-year period.
Well, 5 years seems apt. We actually have a great graphic that has a map that shows you some of the progression of people finally coming to their senses and granting women the right to vote. So we've got there's four colors there, and we can see that New York was pretty early on in the game.
Yeah,
we
it was
had our stuff
about,
together.
the Western states came first.
Right.
They needed the women to vote. And New York was actually the first state on the East Coast to give women full suffrage, because some of the ones in between gave partial suffrage. Like you can vote in the school board elections because you're a woman and kids are important, but we're not going to actually let you vote for president.
So we were 12th in the nation then.
Right.
Yeah, depending, the numbers are kind of skewed because Utah was a territory, then Utah was a state, and that sort of thing. But we were the first on the East Coast, and
that gray color is for states that did it before even having statehood.
Exactly, exactly. And but New York State gave full suffrage. The presidential election, school boards,
Up and down,
everything.
as we well should have.
Exactly.
So that definitely seems worthy of a 5-year celebration.
Exactly.
So you guys have come sort of full circle, taking it all the way from there to incorporating some things from our digital age to have people right some of those wrongs of the archiving process and really say the women's names.
Yeah, so one of the most important things we're doing on our website, womensactivism.nyc, we have a tab that says share your activist story. So we want people to go on and share the story of it's your mom or a woman from your neighborhood or a woman from history, that's a story who's never been told, to go on and post the story, why you find her inspiring, what she's done. 2 minutes, it's not it's not an essay. And then we're going to archive all those stories, so we'll have them in perpetuity in the archives of the city of New York. It's really about telling the stories of the unsung heroes. We have Black History Month, we have Women's History Month, we hear Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, and they were wonderful and did important things, but there's a lady in Queens, doing a soup kitchen who's doing really amazing, wonderful thing, or a group of immigrant women who are cooking the native foods of their lands and introducing them to young people that are really beautiful, and their stories need to be told as well.
We're actually live on the page right now.
So yeah, we have some of these entries, but I really love what you're doing here. I mean, why not take this time to encourage activism and female activism in general across the boroughs?
This woman has her mom, who was from Birmingham, Alabama in 1942, when I'm sure the world wasn't such a safe place for Black women to vote there. You have everything here from Emma Watson, someone nominated, to Fannie Lou Hamer.
And we're not.
No, it's open
everybody's
source.
okay, right? We're totally open source. We're not judging in any way. And I think that for people to really get those stories out there and tell the stories and share it, and if that inspires somebody to get out and do something in their own neighborhood, we're not pushing one cause or another. We want people to be activists. And we didn't want to do this project history-based. We didn't just want to tell the story like this happened in 1917, this happened, because that's interesting, but there needs to be more. There needs to be activism based on history, connecting it with today, making things happen.
Right. To encourage us to remember that we can do the things that we can do now because of what happened before, but that means that we still have what we have now because of what happened before. So tell us about the event that's happening. Is it on the...
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
It's tomorrow already.
It's tomorrow already.
So, the month's almost over.
Yeah. So yes, we had an event at the beginning of Women's History Month, a scholar, Sally Wagner, who was really incredible, and then tomorrow we have Susan Goodyear, who is a professor of women's studies at Oneonta, and her sort of area of study is Black women's studies, and she's going to be doing this event centering Black women, talking about women in the suffrage movement. And we've got a tremendous response. We've had to actually change it to a bigger room.
Awesome.
All right.
We still have tickets available, but because people don't know. People want to know. People have heard stories, I think, of Black women having to walk in the back of the parades that went down Fifth Avenue, or Black women not being allowed to participate at all. And I'm not a historian, but from what I understand, at that time, it was unseemly for Black women to be seen on the streets. So Black women did a lot in their homes and met in small groups, and they were quite effective. And when the amendment passed in New York, it was heavily Black and Jewish neighborhoods that passed the amendment. My guess is that black
this.
women and my people, the Jewish women, like gave a little nudge to the
that
men to
going
do
on.
the voting.
Yeah.
And so I think we have those women to really be thankful for about why we actually did get this amendment passed.
Well,
here in New
looking
York.
at the political landscape now in 2016, and we see so many issues of disenfranchisement popping up at different states, and Arizona comes to mind. Where's the fight now? What are you hearing from everyone in the community, from the professors who do historical to even the website, about where people want to go next with this?
Yeah, it's interesting. We did a big event, a kickoff event in November. It was called Declaration of Sentiments, the Remix. So the original the Katie Stanton document was the Declaration of Sentiments. We wanted to kind of take a relook at it. And we invited trans women to perform, this fabulous dance troupes and singers and poets and all kinds of folks, a young teen group called Girls Be Heard, and they really came out and talked about, I'm a feminist with melanin, like I'm part of this, and like you might want to be pushing me out, but I'm in it. And I know feminism is a word that is can be polarizing, but these particular young women were like, we want to call ourselves feminists, and we're pushing our way in the door. Trans women sometimes don't feel part of the movement. And you know, we've really tried with this whole process to include all who call themselves women in any way. And at the event, we actually had some fantastic men, so we're not anti-men.
I'm a feminist. I'm a feminist. I'm a womanist, like me and that Canadian Prime Minister. No,
That's right.
You believe in the equality.
Exactly. So I think that's really important. We want to make sure all the boroughs feel included. We want to make sure all kinds of women feel included, and that the women's movement should be inclusive. You know, women have been excluded. We don't need to exclude women.
So we've gotten support from the city. Do you feel like there's state backing for some of these ceremonies? How has that response been?
So there has been a bill passed in New York State, and there's some question now about funding. So the governor has not put any money behind it yet. It's
Come on, women's equality agenda.
Yeah.
Where you at?
So
What's up with that?
So what can we do in that absence? Where should we be standing up digitally? I know you guys are also in the fundraising game as well. So
we are,
give
of
us some
course.
marching orders.
Yeah. Okay. So in terms of the New York State, which I work for the city, but for New York State, the New York Council for the Humanities, who actually is our partner on the event for tomorrow. They have a speaker series which they've helped to fund. They're terrific, and they have an online petition encouraging the governor to give funding. In terms of pushing the Centennial celebration forward, at womensactivism.nyc, we have a give button, and we love individual supporters. We've moved, most of the things we've done have been from small, I feel like Bernie, but you know, small individual supporters.
Yeah.
You know, we would really appreciate that, and also just to be part of our process. You know, come to the event tomorrow. If you go to, I don't know if they have a tag there, but it's
Oh, we got it all.
you do? Okay, so it's, let's see, you can go to visitor services at records.nyc.gov, and it's an email address, and just go there and RSVP for the event tomorrow. So
every time Donald Trump says some boneheaded thing about a woman, just make a little hash mark, and at the end of the week, end of the month, take all those hash marks, add them up, match it dollar for dollar, and send it to these guys.
exactly, and we're not, you know, supporting one party or another
it's
here.
just about women voting and exercising their voice.
And being an activist. We've got the vote now, so what are you going to do with it? Be an activist. Get out there.
Absolutely.
Be it in your church, in your synagogue, in your mosque, just in your soup kitchen, whatever it is. Get out there and be a part of making New York a better place.
All right. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
No better way to end than that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
So vote.
Appreciate it.